The Stormlight Archive is my favorite story of all time. It has great world building, a compelling story, and an amazing cast of characters. But what makes it so special to me is how it makes me feel, how it influences my life. Stormlight is one of two stories that has impacted my life in a way I will never forget. It has taught me lessons and inspired me to become a better person. Stormlight is filled with characters that are amazing, who go through journeys that are epic and personal at the same time, and I love each of the main characters for different reasons. I love Dalinar's journey of change, of facing his past and accepting it, while also using it as a mechanism to become better. I love Shallan's journey to search for herself, a yearning to find out who she really is. I love Navani's journey as a scholar, Venli's journey as the last listener, and Szeth's journey to become his own man. However, at the end of the day, there is only one who is my favorite. Not just my favorite character in Stormlight or my favorite character in the Cosmere, he is my favorite character of all time. This is a man who is burdened by his past, a man who just can't seem to catch a break, a man who keeps failing and failing and failing, a man who is broken. But he's someone that always gets back up, even when he doesn't want to. Even when it seems impossible, even when all the odds are stacked against him. This video is about a character named Kaladin Stormblessed, my favorite character of all time and the man that taught me to never give up. Kaladin's struggles revolve around one major concept, the idea that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, at the end of the day, it always ends up in failure. Even if he's happy for a few moments, sooner or later it all gets taken away from him. It creates a feeling within Kaladin that he's just not good enough, and if he was a little better, he could prevent any tragedies from happening. Regret and guilt terrorize him constantly, and it gets worse the longer he ignores it. It all started with his little brother Tien. When they were both enlisted in Amaram's army, Tien was the only person that kept Kaladin's spirits up. His cheerful nature always helped Kaladin, pushing him to keep going. However, one day, Tien was killed during a battle, and that scarred Kaladin for life. He blamed himself for not being able to protect Tien, not just as a soldier, but as his older brother. From here on out, it's just been the cycle of hope and despair, success and failure. Kaladin tries to do something good, gives hope to people, and then something catastrophic happens and he loses it all. A lot of people would say, hey, just man up. Everyone faces these things and you just have to deal with it. But it's much easier to say than to accept, especially when you know you've given it your all. Especially when you know it could have turned out differently, and because you weren't as strong as you expected, that it all fell apart. I completely understand him being too hard on himself and him essentially hating himself for the things he can't do. It's easy to preach to look at your accomplishments and not your failures, but when you're in the thick of it, going through constant struggle and feeling that nothing is going right, you just can't see that. I love that Kaladin's problems are real, and they aren't solved at the snap of a finger. Him becoming a Radiant and swearing more ideals doesn't solve his issues. Just because he's a hero once in a while, it doesn't mean he just forgets all of his past failures. Especially when he continues to fail, and his past comes back at those vulnerable moments to haunt him. We know this happens when Kaladin tries to protect young soldiers like Tien. He gains the title of Stormblessed, since his squad is known as the one with the least casualties, but then Amaram betrays him. His squad members are killed, he's turned into a slave, and sent off to the Shattered Plains. When he gets there, he's hopeless because he has to run these bridges and the soldiers in Sadeas' army expect him to go on this suicide mission every single day. Kaladin had to once again see people he was surrounded by die, and even though he didn't know them, he still blamed himself for their deaths, particularly of one kid who reminded him of Tien, who he couldn't save during a bridge run. At this point, he's overwhelmed by his failures, past and present, and he almost takes his life because he believes he is the cause for people dying. After all, he was still alive, but they weren't. But that's when Syl, his friend who he had befriended earlier in the book, comes to him and tells him that it's not his fault. Instead of blaming himself, he should try and help these people as best as he can. And that's where Kaladin is sparked with hope, an idea. This is a common theme we see with him, where he thinks, yeah, I'm done, I can't take it anymore, but then still finds a way to stand up and keep fighting. Kaladin, gaining hope once more, trains his fellow bridgemen so that they can survive on these runs. He gives them a reason to live, and as an example, runs at the very front of the bridges to inspire them. It takes a while, but soon enough, they all fall in line, survive these bridge runs, and grow strong. But then, as the cycle dictates, the moment things start looking good, it all comes tumbling down. In an attempt to save themselves, Kaladin and Bridge 4 cost Sadeas' army a major loss, and Kaladin is then sent out into a high storm as punishment. He is sent to his death. All this, and it's still just halfway through the first book. This guy is constantly being tested, and honestly, I don't blame him for feeling the way he does. Hell, I commend him for having hope through all of that, where many people would just give up. And hey, to be fair, he did give up many times, but the fact is that he got back up. Always got back up. Even when he was facing a high storm all alone, even when he had to watch many of his bridgemen die, even when he betrayed his oaths, even when he saw Elhokar die in front of his eyes, this man still got back up. And he's so well written that he doesn't just get back up without any scratches. He holds on to these scars, and they come back to haunt him every now and then. This is why I love Kaladin's character in Rhythm of War, because here he's finally facing the repercussions of ignoring all of his problems. As we know, Dalinar removes him from his post as High Marshal, because Kaladin is freezing up in battle, like he did at the palace in Oathbringer. He has severe battle shock, and just holding a spear causes him to start shaking. I'm so happy that Kaladin isn't one of those heroes who, after having his epic moments, is just rid of his issues. Powers don't equal treatment, and this hits especially hard in this fourth book. If you really think about it, being a hero would probably be really mentally taxing. Yes, you're a beacon of hope for those around you, but no one is mentally prepared to be thrust into this life where everyone expects you to always save the day. Especially when people you know are dying for the same cause. Kaladin as a person already put so much stress on himself, and to bear the hopes of all the citizens of Eritharu and the Windrunners was actually worse for him. Yeah, they know him as a hero, but in his mind, he failed to save Elhokar. He failed to save Tien. He failed time and time again, and he believes that he just doesn't deserve that title of Stormblessed. He doesn't deserve to be called a hero. This is very real. Although I haven't dealt with the same level of stress as Kaladin, I know the feeling of ignoring all your accomplishments, ignoring what others think of you, because you think you're just a failure. Nobody knows how your situation came to be, they just see what's on the surface. Kaladin went through a lot to get here, and to be honest, it wasn't enough to heal him. One of the best and most real lines he says are something along the lines of waking up every day and still feeling tired. I completely get that. Sometimes you stress yourself out so much, not only is it hard to go to sleep, but when you get back up, you don't feel relieved or well rested. It's just tiring, man, and I can only imagine how much worse it would be for a man like Kaladin. So in this book, he goes back to being a surgeon under his father. During this time, Kaladin is helping mental health patients like himself recover. He talks to them, he understands their darkness, and basically shows them that they're not alone. He gives these people hope, just like he did back in Bridge 4. This was such a cool callback to that, and also a unique way for Kaladin to still help people, even if he's not on the battlefield. He realizes that any of these people could have easily been him. Kaladin sees it in their eyes and they see it in his, which is why he fits this role so well. No one could do a better job of understanding these people than Kaladin. The first man Kaladin helps is a man named Norrell, who only has one hand and was on the verge of taking his own life. Slowly but surely though, Kaladin talking to him, reassuring him, and basically having a therapy session with him shows great improvement in Norrell's condition. Kaladin is making a big difference here, helping people who previously had no hope in life to move on. This part of Kaladin's journey is great because it shows us how much he cares about others more than himself, not just on the battlefield. As he is talking to these patients, you can see that a lot of this advice could work for Kaladin too, but he's just so focused on distracting himself from those thoughts that he rarely has time to face it. He takes protecting others a little too far, and so it's understandable why he's so hard on himself. Unfortunately, the Singers take over Oritharu, and Kaladin just can't let that slide. Contrary to his father's advice, Kaladin fights back a Singer who is going to take Teft away. At this point, Kaladin can't stand the thought of another one of his friends being taken away from him. So, Kaladin alone, without his radiant powers, full of battle shock, has to take on an entire army of these Singers. However, after he barely evades the pursuer, he is led into this dark room. Kaladin is stuck there all alone, with an unconscious Teft and Syl, all alone in a dark room, giving his mind the perfect opportunity to strike. His thoughts overwhelm him as they take over his mind. He shakes uncontrollably in his sleep during the nights, constantly having nightmares of his failures, his past, and being unable to protect anyone. Yet, he still doesn't give up. No powers, few allies, and every single odd stacked against him, Kaladin still fights back. With the help of Navani and the sibling, he tries his best to help out. The people of the tower take note of this, and this raises their hopes. He becomes a symbol of freedom in their eyes. A hero. They see that this one man, no matter how powerless, is fighting back, is resisting, and the enemy isn't getting a hold of him. And this is where I'd like to talk about a particular interlude. Not just any interlude. This one is my favorite chapter in all of Stormlight. It's not a huge chapter, and it's not one of the epic ones either. It's simply a chapter that shows us how much Kaladin means to everyone, and how much of an inspiration he is, despite what he thinks of himself. This interlude is from Kaladin's parents' perspective. It takes place right after Kaladin stabs a Singer in the surgeon's office, which Lirin takes great offense to. As we know, Lirin, Kaladin's father, does not approve of his son's path. Kaladin's mother, Hesina, though, tries to make him understand that Kaladin is just doing what's right. He's the perfect person for this job, because he's not a maniac or a killer, because he cares. He cares about protecting these people. Lirin still doesn't accept this, and that's when Hesina takes him to a man with only one hand, sitting on a stool. The man is drawing the Shash glyph, Kaladin's symbol, on the people of the tower, so that they can all feel like Stormblessed. It is a symbol of hope. It turns out this is the first man Kaladin helped during his mental health sessions, Norrell, who himself is wearing Kaladin's symbol. He looks much better than he did when Lirin had met him all the way at the beginning of the book. He's well dressed and talks properly now, all thanks to Kaladin. Lirin asks him why he wears the symbol, and Norrell says that he'll be ready to fight when Stormblessed calls for him. Lirin calls this nonsense because fighting was the reason Norrell had battle shock in the first place, so why would he still continue fighting? And to that, Norrell gives a simple but beautiful answer. From here, I'll just read you the text because it's just too good. Suppose you're right, sir. Can't argue with a surgeon about the nonsense we do. But sir, do you know why I get up each day? Lirin shook his head. It's hard sometimes, Norrell said, stirring. Coming awake means leaving the nothingness, remembering the pain. But then I think, well, he gets up. You mean Kaladin? Lirin asked. Yes, sir. He's got the emptiness, bad as I do. I can see it in him. We all can. But he gets up anyway. We're trapped in here and we all want to do something to help. We can't, but somehow he can. And I've listened to Ardent's talk. I've been poked and prodded. I've been stuck in the dark. None of that worked as well as knowing this one thing, sir. He still gets up. He still fights. So I figure I can too. Man, this chapter just always gets me in the feels. To me, this is the chapter that encompasses Kaladin's character in a nutshell. It's simply stated, but the words hold so much value because we know what our boy has been through, especially when they come from the mouth of someone we know has given up the fight just like Kaladin. I just really love this chapter, and although there are much more epic and important chapters in this series, this one is my favorite just because of all the emotion that it packs. And of course, we can't end this video without talking about Kaladin swearing the fourth ideal. An ideal that took him 2 books to come to terms with, and a way of thinking that he couldn't accept since the very beginning. Moash, yet again after betraying Kaladin in Words of Radiance, then killing Elhokar in Oathbringer, this time kills Teft. Teft being the guy who was always by Kaladin's side ever since the Bridge 4 days. He was like a grandfather figure that always understood Kaladin's emotions and knew what to say to him. To me, this was one of the few people left in Kaladin's life who he felt he did right by. Someone he actually managed to save, to protect. I mean, the whole reason Kaladin started rebelling against the Singers in the tower was because he didn't want them to hurt Teft, and now he was gone. I didn't expect this, not at all, and at this point, Kaladin is completely broken. He's defeated, but the Singers aren't done with him yet. One of them takes Lirin, Kaladin's father, and throws him from the tower, right into the High Storm. And whereas in the first book Kaladin chose not to jump into the chasm and take his own life, this time he makes the jump. Thankfully, Dalinar convinces the Stormfather to give Kaladin some time to think, and Dalinar then sends Kaladin into a vision. A vision where Tien, the first person Kaladin lost, speaks to him. Kaladin says he can't go on like this anymore. He feels useless. All of his failures have finally broken him, and he's ready to give it all up. But Tien tells him something that, at last, gets through to him. Tien says that instead of remembering all the times Kaladin failed someone, he should remember what he did for them. Instead of regretting what he couldn't do, he should just live in the moment. Most of these people did not die because of Kaladin, they died of their own choices, and they did it for a greater cause. Tien says he chose to die that day during the attack. It wasn't Kaladin's fault. Everyone at some point will die. So, instead of regretting the past, it was time Kaladin moved on and lived in the moment. As all of this hits Kaladin, he finally accepts it and swears the fourth ideal. I accept that there will be those I cannot protect. And this time he swoops down just in time to save his father and embraces him. This journey was one of the most real and deserving I have ever witnessed. It took him more than 4,000 pages, countless setbacks, and 4 ideals to come to terms with himself. Kaladin doesn't just solve his problems by gaining powers, and his problems don't vanish either. They stay with him, even after this. Although not many of us go through the same degree of stress as Kaladin, you can't deny that at his core, Kaladin is just like any of us. At the end of the day, he isn't a superhuman radiant. He's just a guy who wants to protect his loved ones. A guy who is often too hard on himself and someone who feels pressure and stress. Someone who falls down every now and then and doubts himself constantly. However, no matter how bad the situation, how fierce the opponent, how impossible the odds, Kaladin Stormblessed always gets back up. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing and all that good stuff. I know I haven't made a Cosmere video in a while, but I will continue to make them because I absolutely love everything Brandon puts out. Other than that, I guess I'll see you on the next one.